Welcome, lords and ladies, back to the realm. I am the Goat King, and today I want to talk about homebrewing extravagant worlds. Whether you're creating something wholly new or recreating a setting from a show that you absolutely adored, homebrewing an entire world is, I think it's pretty common amongst our hobby. And a lot of people fall into some pitfalls that we can reveal in this episode. The first thing to be aware of: homebrewing a world is not the same as writing an adventure. And it doesn't matter how detailed your world is, if you haven't written an adventure for it, your players are going to have a really tough time getting into it. Homebrewing an entire world is also a very laborious task, and if you spend all of your time trying to build up this world to be completely ready for whatever could happen, one, you won't succeed. You won't have it finished yet. And two, you won't have an adventure for your players to jump into when they enter the world. I've been there, I've done that, it wasn't a good idea. Your first step is to build a kernel of the world that's playable and fully fleshed out, and then build some adventuring hooks for it and some encounters for it. After your players play that first session, you'll have an idea of where they want to take their story, and then you can build the world in that direction, ensuring that you're almost always building a world your players are going to take part in. As a big fan of Pathfinder 2nd Edition, it should be no surprise that I want to build on what they've provided in the world building segment of the Game Master Guide. In this segment, they detail how you can physically build out a world all the way from the planet down to the settlements and cities, and then onto the cosmology, and optionally do it in reverse for a bottom-up world design. I personally believe they've missed out on a few important and key details. The first is you need a handful of things that make your setting special. If you're starting top down, these should be across the entire world. And if you're starting bottom up, they should certainly apply to the city or village or pub that you're building in. But these are the details, the reasons you're creating your own world rather than playing in an existing one. These special details should inform every decision you make about the world. For example, a steampunk city newly incorporating magic into its technology is going to use those details in how they affect the people of the various classes and stations in the city, as well as trade and even religion. The next detail I don't want to go overlooked is conflict. Every story, every adventure, it all needs conflict. If you're world building top down, you might add conflict between various nations, or even continents, or even deities. In world building bottom up, you should have conflicts between cities, between parts of the cities, and even between individual businesses. One of the great parts about conflict in stories is it doesn't really need to make sense, because conflict in real life doesn't always make sense. As people and conscious entities engage in conflict, none of them, or at least not all of them, can be perfectly rational. Almost no one will ever have complete information about the situation, and those in charge making the decisions will likely have considerations the people below them carrying out the orders wouldn't even imagine. I think after making these decisions, we should actually start delving into the first decision the book lays out for us, which is top down or bottom up. With bottom up world building, you start with one city, town, or even tavern, and because of this, you quickly build up something you can run an adventure in. Unfortunately, this can make that first place feel disconnected from the setting as you grow it out. Considering that first place had to be self-sufficient for storytelling, it can be missing links that you would have to other places as you build the world out further. Depending on the feel of this setting, you may even choose to do this intentionally so that you can build distance between every individual place, which is perfect for episodic storytelling. With top-down world building, your world starts like a smooth ball of clay, and pass by pass you carve away pieces, first creating large details and working your way down every step to smaller and smaller details. Doing it this way helps you establish connections in your world that are broad-reaching, things like trade routes and wars. Of course, as you work to smaller and smaller details, if you have any intention of actually running, you'll need to leave more and more of the world in the fog of unknown, detailing only what you need in that step so your next step can be more refined. By the end of this, you should have one area where you can run an adventure in, at least for your first session. And after that, you can start building out peripherally, using all the groundwork you've already laid, the foundation you've poured. Top-down works best when you want to tell a story with very tight connections, where everything is important to the next. Now that we have our world building started, we should start to consider how it affects the actual in-game rules. Rarity is one of the biggest tools you have to detail this, where you can decide whether different items, spells, or feats are available to your players, as well as specific ancestries or heritages, or even versatile heritages. Changing the rarity of an element allows you to bring it further into your story, making it more common, or push it out so that maybe the players would never see anything like it. A deep medieval fantasy setting will rarely, if ever, see anything to do with gunpowder or clockworks, and might even have magic itself be particularly rare. For this, you might make some of the more magical ancestries rare, things like gnomes or elves. You might make several of the spellcasting classes rare or uncommon. But while rarity may be the first tool you can use to affect the mechanics of the game to align with your world, it's not the last. The Game Master Guide has many tools and variant rules that can help flesh out your world. One that I've selected for this video is the Magic Item Variant Rules, which allow you to represent the usual magic item bonuses as PC skills or the quality of their equipment. But for now, I want to ask you, have you built a setting you're particularly proud of? And what did you do to introduce your players to it? What was your first adventure? And how did you modify the rules of the system to support it? Next week, I'm going to do some build videos for minis, so come back for that soon.